We're living in times where there are so many people that have come in contact with paranormal activities, or they've come in contact with spirits or ghosts, or maybe dead relatives, friends, or even people that they don't even know. People that are caught or trapped between worlds, or people that exist in a totally different time period. Some of the most people, if I said that correctly, some of the greatest experiences come from children. Children with imaginary friends that they may have a parent that don't believe them, or don't believe in the supernatural, or don't believe in the paranormal, or don't believe in ghosts or spirits. So you find your child talking to someone that's not there. You find your child playing with someone that's not there. And in many cases, parents, when they see this, it makes them uneasy or uncomfortable. It makes them feel sad inside. And sometimes they take on that responsibility to themselves and think that it's something that they did wrong. They start labeling their children as having some type of emotional or psychological issue, or they may even think that their child is lonely for a friend. So they'll spend money to have their child evaluated, and in many cases placed on some type of medication. But what that parent failed to realize is that child is having a real experience. That child is speaking or communicating with someone of a totally different realm. And they don't realize that their child is in a very dangerous state, because if they are not open to the supernatural or paranormal, that child is in a position to be possessed. That child is open for possession. And in many cases, children are possessed and parents don't know. They have their child medicated and talking to psychiatrists or psychologists to try to get to the root of the problem. I was talking to a cop a couple of days ago, this cop friend of mine, and I'm not sure what brought the conversation on, or maybe something was mentioned about someone had a paranormal experience. I'm not even sure what we were talking about, but out of the clear blue sky, he says to me, I had an imaginary friend. And I looked at him, and my first thought was, this dude is just clowning. He's not serious. But the more he talked, the more I realized that he was real. He had the name. It was a little girl that used to come to him as a child and play with him. That was his friend. He not only had a name for this little girl, but he gave detailed accounts to his visit, or the visit of this little girl coming to him. And he said that the little girl said to him, like, to tell his mom that I don't want to leave. Like, I guess the mother was trying to work with her child. She thought maybe that he had issues, and so she played along with him and saying, oh, is your little friend here? Well, it's time for your little friend to go now, because you have to go to bed. So the little girl was telling him that she wasn't ready to go. But as this guy talked to me, he was telling me she had on a white dress, and he was describing the dress to me. He was saying that she looked as if that the family weren't too wealthy or well off. And you know how, like, when they dress their kids on Sunday, they got to dress them up in clothes to make it look like they're nice, or they have expensive clothes, or just to look nice. And he said that she was She would sit there, and he said she would twirl the dress, roll it up, and unroll it. He also gave an account of her accent, how she sound, just like little detailed things. So I believe that he was telling the truth. And see, that's what a lot of parents have to look at when their child claim that they have an imaginary friend. They're not going to call the friend an imaginary friend. They're just going to say my friend. They're going to have a description of that person. They're going to give detailed account, and that's what you have to pay attention to. Pay attention to details. Don't just hear your child tell you that I have a friend. Listen to the details. What the child was wearing. How your child describes this imaginary friend. Even detailed accounts of the accent, the way this child or this imaginary friend enunciate or pronounce certain words. And this is what this cop was telling me. He was telling me that she pronounced a word a certain way, or there's little things that she say, but he gave detailed accounts of this little girl that was his imaginary friend. He was able to tell her likes and her dislikes. He knew what she liked and what she didn't like, right? And so many people, not just children, because there's even adults that have imaginary friends that visit them. And those so-called imaginary friends are no more than spirits that's either trapped in this realm, or demonic entities, or they may just well be communicating or communing with someone of a totally different realm. But if you notice that your child is talking to themselves, if they're playing with their imaginary friends, if they're able to, and you're standing there talking to your child, and your child is talking to this person, and then you ask your child, well, where is he? Or where is she? Oh, they're right here, well, tell them that they have to leave now, So the child tells the imaginary friend, you have to leave now. And then the parent asks, well, where is the child now? Well, she or he's leaving, or she or he says this. Or that imaginary friend just may well tell your child that he or she don't like you for whatever reason. Okay, so you have to really pay attention to details that your child tells you about their friend. Race, the way the child dresses, the child's accent, little words that they use, or how they pronounce certain words. And this guy, he says, I remember her. He says, I remember her. He don't know what happened. I said, well, whatever happened? Does she ever visit you? He said, no. He said, she just like one day left and she didn't come back, But you have children that are actually possessed by these imaginary friends, because these imaginary friends deceive these children into thinking that they're friendly entities, when in reality, they're trying to possess your child because they may have some unfinished business here on earth, or they just may want to continue to exist or live on this earth. They weren't ready to die. So if your child, or maybe even a loved one, it don't even have to be a child. If you notice someone have an imaginary friend, pay attention to that. Just sit back, watch, observe. Don't judge that person. Don't judge the person, because that person could just well be dealing with a demonic entity, or someone that's of a totally different realm that's trying to find a body to possess. So tell me, do you have an imaginary friend? Have you ever had an imaginary friend? Do your children have an imaginary friend? Or have they ever had an imaginary friend? And how did you handle that? How did it make you feel to know that your child was talking to someone that you can't see? And when you talk to your child and ask you to ask this imaginary friend questions, your child will get answers from this entity to relay back to you. How does that make you feel? So share your experience if you ever had an imaginary friend, or a relative, a loved one, or even your child. if you've ever had an imaginary friend, share your experience. And if you can't type, if it's too much to type, make a video and do a response video to this video. So feedback, tell me what you think. Until next time, I'm fearless.